I'm so glad that you're here. Listen, let me just say that there's not many times that an author is able to say their book has saved somebody's life. And that is the case with my next guest. His name is Jed Morgan. He wrote Odyssey of a Phoenix, Down in Flames. Jed, welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity. Happy to be here.
Man, let's jump in. I mean, to be able to say that your book saved someone's life, literally they made a decision to keep going, give it another try, and not end their life because of your book. Wow.
Yeah, it's humbling, to say the least.
What is your book about? How did it strike such a chord with somebody like that?
Well, suicidal tendencies and mental health is a huge part of the story. The main character, he commits suicide in chapter 1 and discovers he's a phoenix, which means he regenerates when he dies. So that's what the whole question of the story is what happens to a suicidal person when they physically cannot die. So the person you're referring to read the book and decided that he didn't need to kill himself, because if Arien could endure his life's journey, then he could too. And as someone who's struggled with a lot of those same issues, it gave my own life meaning and kept me going as well.
Yeah, so you're very involved personally in this book. I mean, it's not like you're writing it from a 40,000-foot view. This is, right. You're all in.
Oh, there's scenes directly taken from my childhood and my life as a whole, like shot for shot. It's very personal to me. And it was started out as therapy, to be honest.
Do you feel like it helped you through writing this book? Did it help you?
Oh, absolutely. The biggest thing when you're having those types of issues is you can't say what you're really feeling. It's really hard to articulate what you're going through. And so by struggling to go through that, to force myself to put my emotions down on paper, it helped me understand it better. And then I had to come up with a solution for Arien, the main character, to get through those same issues. So by coming up with a solution for him, I came up with a solution for myself.
They need to do a documentary on this. This is just so cool. So let's talk about the themes and philosophies in the story.
So yeah, I have a lot of different themes in philosophy. I actually did a lot of research, and Greek mythology has been a huge part of my childhood. So I incorporated the themes from history and mythology as well. So one of the biggest ones is, in ancient mythology, the Greek gods did a lot of terrible things, some might say. I mean, Zeus has a history with the women. And so the philosophy I go with is that it's a symbiotic relationship between humanity and the divine. So as our morality evolved, so did theirs. So if they could learn to be better, then maybe we can as well. And the biggest philosophy in it is, it's not about creating a perfect world. It's about creating balance, because there's no way to have true happiness without true sadness. And so we need a combination of those two elements. So one of the main villains of the series is trying to take away human pain and suffering. But Arien, despite how much he's gone through, decides that he's only happy today, or can ever be happy, because of his history and his pain and suffering. So it's never going to be a utopia, because if there ever is a utopia, there's no such thing as happiness in that utopia.
Have you always been a deep thinker?
I'd like to think so. I was homeschooled growing up, so I just read constantly. I read the Odyssey, the Iliad, and a lot of Dickens by the time I was 10 or 11.
Oh, wow.
So I just really started early, and yeah, just reading constantly those more classic literature, I feel like helped elevate my realm of thinking.
Yeah. And mythology, I suppose that's just a great way. And, you know, I'm going to assume you're homeschooled, Christian faith. Is there?
Yes, ma'am.
So parables, mythology, it's all just a way for us to be able to intertwine our own experiences with something that's relatable, with stories like that. Right?
Absolutely.
That's an important part. Yeah.
No, that's the best way for humanity as a whole to understand our struggle is, I mean, I use the example of nonfiction. I've always struggled with nonfiction because it's too straightforward. It's just black and white bullet points. But if you incorporate it into a story of these epic characters that you can put yourself into, you realize the solutions, you realize the point of the story. That's why parables have resonated with humanity throughout the millennia, is they appeal to our creative instincts.
Yeah, boom, it comes to color, it comes to life, right?
Exactly.
So let's talk about the mental health side of this. What do you hope when someone reads your book that they say at the end, if they've been struggling with mental health issues?
Well, main character's journey is incredibly messed up. Like, I challenge myself to challenge that character and all the characters so much. So at the end of the day, if the person can read it and say, wow, if Arien didn't lose his mind going through that, maybe my more ordinary problems are manageable. And that's part of what the fantasy elements also help in, is that there are these big bombastic scenarios that he has to deal with that are really horrible and awful, but they create a grounding to ordinary everyday problems and make it seem bearable.
Sounds like a book of hope.
Absolutely. It starts out very dark, but that is the point at the end of the day, is that there's hope to get through anything you go through, as I did through the harrowing experiences of my youth. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel.
You know, Jed, you paint such a picture with your words. I have to imagine, and I haven't had a chance to look at the inside of the book, I have to imagine that there's a lot of, I just imagine the illustrations that must be in there.
There are illustrations. It's divided up into 15 parts, and each part has their own illustration. And I actually was really fascinated with this, working with my illustrator, is because we wanted to portray that level of mental illness at a very visceral level. So what we did is we studied mental institutions to see what those types of patients would draw in their therapy sessions. It's a very black, scratchy lines, a lot of scratching lines, a lot of dark colors. And we base the illustrations off that style. And wherever Arien is in his emotional journey, the illustrations reflect that. So if at any point he feels like he's getting a little bit better, there's less black scratchy lines, there's more color. And the illustrations themselves reflect how he's seeing the world around him, as much as the words themselves describe it.
You know, it's almost, when you describe what the illustrations, I can picture it. It's almost like music. I mean, it's so palpable. It's so real. So such a part of the story being woven in there, the emotion. That's beautiful. How cool. All right. And let's talk about the 4 sequels.
Okay. So yeah, when I started writing, I knew that I wanted it to be a series. So I actually had plans for all 4 sequels before I even began writing the first one. And it's all building up to the idea of utopia, as I was talking about. That's what the 5th one's going to be called, is utopia. And at the end of the day, he's fighting his pain being taken from him, because without that, he has no identity. So they are very interconnected. They all pick up right where the last one's left off, and they're rather large. They're about 600 pages a piece, but they're all an intense epic that shows the emotional journey of a person from just in the gutter, gun to his own head, to someone who has to decide suicide by heroism, or is he okay just living? The exact inverse of the classic hero's journey. In the classic hero's journey, the hero starts off fighting for life, whether or not it's the life of a loved one, society, himself, and at the end of the day is willing to die for those people he's fighting for life for. It's the exact inverse for my character. He's fighting for his own death and has to potentially come to the conclusion that he's okay just living.
Wow. We've got to jump into this. Thank you so much. I wish we had so much more time left. For people to get a hold of you, if they're listening to the radio interview, how can they do that? Or
yeah, buy the books, especially. I'm available on all social media platforms. Jed Morgan, there's not many of us out here, so look for the red beard, you'll find me. I'm available on Amazon. If you search Jed Morgan, I'm pretty much the only person who comes up. And search for Odyssey with Phoenix. It's the only thing that comes up, and my stuff's all listed in with that book page.
Okay, and Writers Republic, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yep, that's my publisher.
Okay, very good. Jed, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. We look forward to the next books.
Thank you so much for having me.